So just about 2 years ago, I signed a real estate deal that was supposed to take 6 months, but instead it ended up taking 14 long months. And that extra time, well, it ended up costing me over $40,000. Now, this was supposed to be a simple $45,000 rehab, clean flip, easy exit. Instead, it turned into an $80,000 rehab that dragged on for over a year and quietly became the most expensive lesson of my real estate investing career. And just to make sure I was paying attention, well, the day before closing, I got a phone call stating that I needed to bring an extra $8,000 to the closing table. And I'll get back to that later on in the video because that phone call was way more important than I realized at the moment. Now, while all of this was happening, I was naturally in two minds. Do I walk away or do I push forward and try to make this deal work? I think most people would probably push forward, and that's exactly what I did. But looking back, I think I know exactly what choice I should have made, but hindsight is always 20/20. Right? So today I'll be breaking down exactly how all this happened. The real numbers, the real mistakes, so you don't repeat them in 2025 and beyond. Now, my strategy was simple. I would go in low on my rehab amount, do most of the work myself to offset my costs, but by juggling multiple projects, that became impossible, and that single misjudgment had a significant impact on the overall outcome of this project. Why am I even telling this story? Well, most people only choose to talk about their wins. Nobody talks about the deals that actually humble them. And I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing this because this deal looked like deals that people are signing every single day. Nothing about this deal looked reckless or felt crazy. Well, at least at the time. And that's exactly why it was dangerous. It's always the deals that seem too good to be true. But I guess to some degree, I was my own worst enemy by not being as diligent with running my own numbers. And about that $8,000, well, more than 6 months had passed between my initial pre-approval and my closing date. And once that time runs out, well, lenders tend to not guess. They tend to re-verify. So I ended up having to do another credit pull. They rerun the numbers and determined I was over leveraged. Their solution? Well, 6 months of interest payments up front. Now, that was almost $8,000 of extra cash that was completely not a part of the plan. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. This should have been the point where I drawn the line and walked away from the deal, right? Not necessarily. By then, I had already made a $5,000 earnest money deposit, and for those who don't understand, earnest money is a form of good faith deposit you make, whereas if you walk away from the deal, the seller gets to keep that money. And guess who wasn't trying to donate $5,000? Ain't nobody got time for that! So here is what the deal looked like on paper. Purchase price of $123,000, rehab for $45,000, and the project cost $168,000. This is of course not including that extra $8,000 or the fees associated with buying real estate. But I'll attach a copy of the term sheet so you could pause the video and go over it on your own time. Now, this is what was happening in my head. I would fix this house for $45,000, sell it within 6 months, do it 10 more times, and suddenly I'm in Miami house shopping, test driving Lamborghinis, and arguing with realtors about ocean views, right?
Wrong. Wrong.
Here is the truth. Real estate does not reward excitement. It rewards discipline. And the investors that last are not the boldest. They are the most precise. They don't hope. They don't guess. They respect the numbers exactly the way they are. The fact is, this was never a $45,000 rehab type of project. Those numbers weren't real. I was optimistic and hopeful at most. But once the work started, the house started telling the real story. A new roof that was completely out the budget, structural problems, plumbing, HVAC, and the list goes on. I discovered a scope gap that was completely different from our initial walkthrough, and that changed everything. $45,000 is the number I wanted, but $80,000 is the number the house demanded. That's $35,000 that had to come from somewhere. And once you're in the deal, well, you're already in the deal. The loan was built for a clean, short turnaround timeline with zero problems, which obviously wasn't the case. But here's the one thing I truly didn't understand at the time. If your loan terms only work if everything goes perfectly to plan, the deal doesn't actually work. Think about it like this. If a deal needs an extra $8,000 at the last minute, that's not fixing the deal. That's actually making the deal worse. I was now $8,000 less liquid and I felt it immediately after closing. And from that moment on, every delay meant more, every month mattered more, and every decision, well, carried that much more pressure. And this drives me to my next point. Always invest in good coaching, a mentor or somebody who has already made the mistakes so you don't have to. Think about it like this. If you were flying across the world, would you prefer being in the cockpit with somebody on their first flight or a pilot who's been flying for 30 years? Real estate is no different. Experience does not eliminate risk, but it helps you land safely when turbulence hits. Now, here's the lesson most investors learn the hard way. Hard money does not reward delays, it punishes them. And if you're not prepared when delays come, you will get burned. Ask me how me know. At the end, I was all in $230,000. Sold the house for $190,000 because even after 14 months, the house still needed more repairs to bring it up to market value. But here's what it taught me. Time is your most expensive asset in real estate. Use it wisely and only to your advantage. I didn't come from a real estate investing background. I didn't have the blueprint or a safety net or generational wealth to guide me. I came to the US a few years ago with nothing but ambition, discipline, and a vision that was bigger than my fears. Learning over excuses and growth even when it was expensive. So that loss did not define me. It educated me. And every lesson brought me closer to the legacy and financial freedom I'm trying to create for me and my family. So if this video helped you think differently about risk and real estate investing deal structure, comment risk below and I'll make a video going over the exact pre-funding checklist I used today. And as always, subscribe if you want the real side of real estate.